consultant neurologist based in Birmingham and a committee member of the Doctors Association. David, morning to you.
Good morning.
So Steve Barclay there saying, look, we fixed your pensions. You can get 78 grand a year in a pension when you leave being a consultant at the age of 65. You've got nothing really to complain about, especially compared to people in other jobs.
Right. I mean, you highlighted this when you pointed out that actually compared to an average worker, salary has dropped 20% since 2010, basically. And the analogy I would make would be, imagine if you went to the pub and asked for a pint and they give you 20% less, how happy you would be. Not very would be the answer. And, you know, a jam tomorrow doesn't pay for the bill today. And, you know, people like me, and I'm a very senior consultant, 59, this is actually not about me. It's about the colleagues after me. And, you know, I think a year ago, literally this week, I was having surgery for prostate cancer. And I absolutely know what it's like to be a patient and understand the anxiety that many patients will have. But, you know, when I see colleagues going overseas or retiring early because of the pay and because of the working conditions, and, you know, we aren't treating fewer patients than we were in 2010. We aren't performing fewer procedures or working less hours. You know, it's a bit rich when the one question Steve Barclay will not answer is why he won't negotiate.
Yeah, and it's the point that we've put to him before that the reason is, David, that he's offered you the best offer. The best and final offer's on the table. So there's nothing to negotiate, I suspect he would say.
Well, he came up with all manner of excuses, blaming a Labour government, the war in Ukraine and the COVID pandemic on the failure, and it is an abject failure of this government to deal with the pay issue for consultants over the last 12 years, basically. And, you know, I am really, really worried where this is heading. And I wouldn't want anyone to be under any illusion, just the essentially emotional blackmail that we're being put under, that the only way we have of trying to highlight the fact that Steve Barclay won't negotiate is by going through industrial action. And obviously, you know, as we go into winter, and, you know, I would say last winter, and I've been consultant over 20 years, was the worst winter I'd experienced in the NHS. Is, you know, why will Steve Barclay not negotiate?
And here's the question, though, in terms of the emotional blackmail. There is concern, there isn't there, that when you can go on strike, the consultants can go on strike, the junior doctors can go on strike, but when you go on strike together, that puts patients at risk. This notion of a Christmas Day service being offered, and Steve Barclay was arguing that means dialysis isn't included, chemotherapy isn't included. You might get some local agreements, you cannot get a national agreement to cover that. So the people who are getting screwed here are the patients, because you're combining strikes. You're not just striking as a consultant, then the junior doctors are also striking. By combining the two, you're really putting the squeeze on, and the squeeze goes on cancer patients, not the government, who just seems to say, well, we've offered everything we're going to offer, good luck.
Well, I think let's see what happens, because I think each one of my colleagues will be weighing up literally hour by hour and day by day what action they're taking, basically. And, you know, I know the consultants are on strike for the next 48 hours. I know I am going to struggle with that. You know, I just know that's not going to happen for the full 48 hours.
What, do you think you might just have to come back in?
Well, the last time I went on strike, and I had a patient who had a life-threatening neurological condition where someone needed to sort out their meds, basically. And that is the emotional blackmail that he's playing, because he knows that doctors don't like seeing patients die, okay? And that is the emotional blackmail that Steve Barclay is playing. And I'm pushing back and saying, why won't you negotiate?
Yeah, but when the crunch came, you went back in and helped.
Exactly, and I'm sure, you know, thousands of my colleagues would do the same.
But it's an interesting point, that, David, because that you can look at that in two directions, can't you? The one direction is, that's great that you did that and you saved a life. The second way of looking at it is, say, what happens if a consultant didn't decide to go back because they believe in striking? That means someone can die.
No, because they'd be referred to the GMC, and of course there is no regulator of politicians. There's certainly no regulator of Steve Barclay.
But you wouldn't be referred to the GMC for staying on strike, were you? You are allowed to strike.
We are allowed to strike, but I think each of us will weigh up what happens, and it's particularly difficult for someone like me. You know, I'm clinical lead. Okay, so you've got the lead of the department going on strike. Okay, and to put this in context, you know, I've got a colleague of mine who's even more senior than me, professor of neurology. Okay. He's retired, but works every Tuesday. He's going on strike today. I mean, what does that say? This is not some bunch of radical student leftists, okay? if you look at the overwhelming majority, so that I keep going back to Steve Barclay, why the hell will you not negotiate?
Well, that's a question that can linger in the air because there is no negotiation at the moment. You're going to go on strike, but if needed, you might come back. David, do you think just finally that maybe it wasn't a good idea to coincide the two, though? Consultants and junior doctors strike. That feels like, is that one stage too far?
No, I don't. I think each of us will, as I say, weigh up what's going to be done. And go back to what we're saying. This is literally a fight for the health service when we see, this in June there were 125,000 vacancies in secondary care. Okay, so for him coming up with a minimal service agreement, okay, when staff morale is at its lowest, he comes out with a bigger stick to beat us. Okay, what's going to happen with that? Well, people will either even more people will retire or just leave.
David Nicholl, good to speak to you. Thank you for sharing your perspective.
Thanks very much.
That's Dr. David Nicholl.